I'm attorney Phil Giacino, and this is Finding Common Ground here on WLINY's Altice. When you want to catch the show, tune in on Saturdays at 10 a.m., channel 115, and Thursdays, 1 a.m. for you insomniacs on channel 20. Tonight, my special guest is George Basil. George was a Little League player of mine many, many years ago. I think he was about 8 years old, and we were called Irma Consulting. Mike was our coach. Mm-hmm. So I want to welcome aboard George Basil. How are you, George?
Thanks for having me, Phil. It's great to be here. I'm George, and I'm a government relations expert and I also sit on the Next Generation Advisory Committee for Suffolk County.
And that's through the legislature?
That is correct.
Okay. So you deal a lot with Leslie Kennedy and people on that legislative body? Of
course, Leslie's great.
Yeah, she was in last week, and the week before that was her husband, John M. Kennedy Jr., who you said announced today that he is running. I think it was at the Denison building, was it?
Yes, it was.
In fact, I was an assistant DA in that building many years ago.
Wow.
And I know the area, and he announced, so he's running for the Suffolk County executive position.
Yep.
So, as a Republican.
Yes.
There may be a few others that may announce also. There may be a primary, but he's a great guy, and he's got an excellent shot.
Definitely.
So you were saying you're on the Next Generation Advisory Council. What exactly is that?
So we're a board of millennial-aged people who advise the legislature on any issues that are dealing with youth of Suffolk County, as well as legislation that's coming through that may need the input of millennial voices with regards to the policy making and implementation of it.
Okay, and millennials generally born the 80s and the 90s, I think as late as 2004, according to some people, but generally early 80s to the latter part of the 90s.
Correct.
Now, you were born in 96?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, when I coached you many years ago, Danny was on the team, and I heard a rumor, other than your dad, I was the best coach you ever had. I'm only kidding. You were 8 years old. You were probably the best ball player on the team, if I remember correctly. You were very good.
Thank you.
But back then, there wasn't a lot of pitching.
No, there wasn't.
At 8 years old.
No.
So you end up going to college. Well, you go to Ward Melville.
Yep.
You graduate from Ward Melville. And you go to college and you play baseball.
Correct. Yeah.
And who'd you play for?
I played for the Chestnut Hill College Griffins, where I got to pitch for a year, and then I made the executive decision to pursue my academic interests.
I made a very similar decision. I played for CW Post for 2 years, 82, 83, 83, 84. We didn't play against each other back then.
Yeah.
You said you played against Post.
Yeah.
But I wasn't on the team at that time.
Yeah. So we actually the Chestnut Hill College used to be an all-women's college because it was.
Well, that's why it was so easy to make the team.
Exactly.
But there were men when you went there.
Sure.
Course.
Yeah. Yep. And it was integrated. It was co-ed, but we ended up going 29-14. We just missed a regional bid, but it was, gotta say, one of the greatest times of my life.
So you played teams like CW Post. Did you get to play Army?
Yeah, no, we didn't play Army. We played Navy that year. It was a lot
Annapolis.
of fun. Yep.
We got to play Army, and I remember we played a doubleheader, and I'm walking across the field, and they start playing taps.
Yeah.
We're not used to that.
No,
I know what that is, but
wasn't.
You're walking across the field, and all of a sudden you got to stop at attention, take your hat off.
Yep.
We played a doubleheader. In fact, I got a triple, the game-winning triple, the first game against them. They beat us the second game.
Wow.
But it was a lot of fun. But I made a similar decision when I transferred from Post to Fordham. I said, I got to focus on my studies.
Yeah.
Because the chances of making the major leagues, I could probably get hit by lightning a few times before making it. There were only 660 in my day.
Yeah.
I know there were more by the time you came along.
Yeah.
But it was a decision I made. Now, where did you ultimately graduate from? What college?
Temple University.
And what did you study there?
Political science.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
Now, what are you looking to do over the next number of years? A lot of times people major in poli-sci and they end up going to law school.
Yeah.
What are you looking to do?
So, a JD is always in my sights, but I've always wanted to, ensure that good policy is implemented. So, working with candidates to ensure that the right candidates are getting elected, as well as, anyone who needs better advice when it comes to policy making. These are all important issues that we want to forward with regards to transit, infrastructure, things like that, and make sure that the future is better for everyone.
How many members are on that advisory council?
There's currently 11.
And all millennials?
Yeah.
Now, when they want to seek out your advice and counsel, how does that happen? Do they call you up? Is there a meeting where you meet and they pick your brains?
Yeah, so there's actually, scheduled meetings that are public that occur at the legislature in Hauppauge, across from the Denison building, actually.
Right. And you're in the 4th precinct?
Yep. right next to the 4th Precinct, and we'll go over the certain legislative issues, and then legislators will come in to propose ideas that they have, as well as take any ideas that we may have for them that may be of interest to them.
Okay. Are there any millennials that are legislators?
Currently, there are not. Everybody falls into either the Gen X pool or the baby boomer.
Of course,
Yeah.
I am one of the last of the baby boomers. The baby boomers are 46 to 64. I was born in August of 64.
No way.
Seriously.
Oh, wow.
So the year after me is whatever that next generation is. But the baby boomers are 46 to 64. A big group. Big group of people.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a book written by somebody who was born December 31st, 1964. And the book was called like the last baby boomer.
That's pretty cool.
And that was it. And that group of people won World War II. Going back to those years. Well, actually, were born around that time period.
Yeah.
And they were called the baby boom generation because the soldiers came back from World War II.
Yeah.
And then Levittown was created.
The
and all
Levitt
of that.
style houses.
So pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I saw something today on social media that was very troubling, and it said that 20%, 1 in 5 of millennials, your group, and I know you're not one of those 1 in 5, but it said saw the American flag. Now, you have a lapel pin on American flag. I do too. But 1 in 5 millennials saw the flag as a sign of intolerance and hatred. Why do you think, now you deal with millennials on a regular basis, why do you think that 1 in 5, 20%, feel that way? When they look at the American flag, they don't see freedom, they don't see men in uniform, women in uniform that fought for this country like you and I see. Why do so many millennials feel that way?
I think it could be a remnant of people who may not have had a great upbringing with the flag. So, in our town, and even in this county, we have a great reverence for the flag because there are just so many reasons presented to us from early on for why it's great. We have National Guard bases here. We have plenty of great law enforcement agents as well as people willing to lay their lives down. Now, some people may not be exposed to that idea because they, have households that don't really watch the news or expose their children to ideas of countries where we don't share the same freedoms or the same privileges that we have here. Now, I associate the flag with the ability to do essentially anything you can put your mind to, and the freedom to express it. Now, there are some people who get brought up with not knowing that and not being able to express themselves. And I hope that those people who believe that the flag means something besides, freedom, patriotism, and the great things that we associate with the flag, would see that there are countries that, plain don't share those ideals.
Right.
And it's a shame.
And you're right. They don't like when you look at, let's say, Venezuela, right, where socialism destroyed that country, or when you look at certain Central American countries where they would give their right arm to get out of that country.
Yeah, and we see it happen.
Right, and you look at the American flag, and why do people want to come here? It's a symbol, but it's a strong symbol. It's like a magnet. People want to come here. Do you think the people that are in those caravans think of the American flag as intolerant,
Absolutely not.
or as they say, hatred? No, they want to come here.
No,
America's not perfect,
No.
but it's the greatest country, in my opinion, that ever existed on the face of the earth.
Sure.
And that's why people will risk their kids' lives to climb a wall or to go in, under a tunnel or something just to get here. And people that are here that benefit so much from that.
Absolutely.
Look at the opportunities that we had. And we didn't grow up rich. We grew up middle class.
Nope.
You went to an excellent high school, Ward Melville.
Great.
I went to an excellent high school, Smithtown West. Even kids that go to schools that maybe aren't tops have the ability to go to college if they do what they're supposed to do in America.
Absolutely.
And people nowadays, even the poor in this country, live better than kings lived, 100, 150 years ago. Think about it. With heating in the house, indoor plumbing, air conditioning, things we take for granted. I went to Mexico, I vacationed there, and last year we went on a little trip off the resort, and there was a little kid that lived in this little, it was like a hut, and the bathroom wasn't even like a full working toilet. It was cinder blocks around an old beat up toilet with no toilet seat and no water source. So when you think about that, it's like we live like kings compared to other parts of the country.
Sure.
And that's why it bothers me when I see these kids don't appreciate. Like my dad was a paratrooper, 101st Airborne Division. Right? I look at the flag and I see men like him, great men, that served this country.
Yeah.
Whether they fought in battle or whether it was a woman who was in the Marine Corps in logistics, they served, they're making sacrifices.
Yeah.
And their families too.
Yeah.
You always see on social media where a woman maybe was away for her kids for 6 months to a year and she comes back and sees them. Look at the sacrifices.
Great moment.
You know, things that maybe we take for granted because, you know, my dad, when I grew up, my dad was always there, my mom was always there, but the people that wear the uniform every day, and that's part of the reason why I wear that lapel pin.
Absolutely, and you know, I'm proud to represent the flag as well on a daily basis on my lapel. But also, you know, I understand that people may have gripes with the country because, you know, we, as you said, we aren't a perfect union necessarily, and there are issues we need to tackle in order to become a better union. But you know, I think when push comes to shove, and when we have the symbol of this country, I'm willing to go to bat for it.
And these millennials, about your age, if I could talk to one of them and say, you hate America, or you think the flag is not, it stands for intolerance and hatred, where else would you want to live? Would you want to live in Venezuela? Would you want to live in Russia? Would you want to live in some of the other countries? Even some of the countries like Canada, they're somewhat free, Canada, but they don't have the opportunity. Even the people that want to succeed in Canada, where do they end up coming? Whether they're in entertainment, whether they're in sports, right?
Yeah.
They want to come here.
Yeah.
Look at, it's funny, it sounds funny, but look at Justin Bieber, right?
Yeah.
He makes a killing here. He lives like royalty in this country. Why did he come from Canada? Because America is the land of opportunity. You can do things here in America that you can't do in a lot of other countries.
Yeah. You know, and I think that you know, speaking to the opportunity of America, there's plenty to be had here. But I also understand that, you know, maybe it's not necessarily an association with the flag of being intolerant or anything like that, but it's deeper harbored feelings against you know, what they think America is. And I also respect that people have the right to say what they want.
Sure.
And
free
you know,
speech.
of course, you know, but knowing that there is the freedom to disrespect the flag, the country,
right,
regardless, you have to acknowledge that you're able to do that, you know, because of it.
Right. And even though I'm not so big on, let's say, limiting a person's ability to mock America, of course, you want to get up on a soapbox and say America's a horrible place.
Go for it.
You're allowed to do that.
It's called Times Square for a reason.
Right. Exactly. You can get up there and you can speak and you can mock it. You should be able to back it up, and I'm sure many of them can't. But this is a country that has not only benefited people who live here, but other parts of the world. Think about it. When we won World War II, we liberated Europe.
Sure.
And then even after we defeated Japan, we rebuilt Japan.
Yeah, Marshall Plan.
Yeah. And in Europe too. So we didn't defeat them for the sake of defeating them, like the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
They just wanted to conquer. That wasn't us.
Yeah.
You know, if they didn't start it, they started it, we finished it.
Of course.
Yeah. Now I want to get to something else, kind of in the same vein. You hear often people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talk about socialism, or how the Green Plan can socially engineer and get rid of racism and things like that. And when I hear, even Bernie Sanders, he started this a number of years ago, even long before, I call it AOC, long before AOC was on the political landscape, you had people like Bernie Sanders, Warren, Harris talking about socialism as though it's something great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, had they really studied in school and learned about Castro's Cuba, or what Russia was like when it was communist?
Yeah.
And they talk about, oh, well, there are some countries, some Nordic countries have socialism. Socialism has been a failure. It's real socialism, everywhere it's existed. But why do so many millennials that I talk to, I was on a show one time, FM radio, and there was a Bernie Sanders supporter. In fact, he had done some work for Bernie Sanders. And he talked about socialism in glowing terms. It was almost like power to the people. But don't they realize that it's not what they think it is? Why do a lot of millennials, kids your age, young men, young women your age, why do they look to socialism as something that's going to be prosperous for a country? Why?
So, with economic policy, with any economic policy, I think we need to understand that there is a ton of nuance because we're talking about a very complex country. Now, I think we do need to gear our economy towards investing in, renewable energies and ensuring that there's environmental justice for places that are going to be affected by rising tides and things like that. But I also understand that there are aspects of our economy currently and our daily lives that have some socialist backgrounds to them. When you pay into a system that not everybody benefits equally from, that is a borrowed socialist aspect. So we have a police force that it's a great police force. It's 13,000 deep plus. And
in Suffolk County, you're talking about.
Yeah, in Suffolk County, we have a police force which is top of the line, and they're able to live within the county comfortably. But the thing is, I haven't called. Thank God I haven't called 911 in years now. So, I haven't seen the same output from that service that maybe someone else living somewhere else in the county has. So I think we need to realize that socialism in a hardline form may not be what's best for this country. But the thing is, there are aspects that we need to create a shared economy on, where we're ensuring that people are living comfortably. Maybe they're not necessarily making millions. Obviously, not everybody can make millions. That would make a dollar worthless.
Right. Sure.
But I think that we also need to understand that there are economic woes that we can cure, and we should be working towards curing. Now, maybe I don't share every view that AOC possesses, but I understand that working towards an economic goal and working towards making sure that we have economic mobility here in Suffolk, in New York, and around the country is important. I think we could agree.
Well, I think it's important that the government puts in policies that are fair.
Sure.
Right. But it's not the government's job, I always say, to pick winners and losers.
Of course.
Because often the government will say, all right, we're going to tax the rich. When they talk about taxing the rich, that scares me a little bit. Because when they say, what's rich? Is rich $250,000 a year? Is it $1 million a year? And when you take money away from those types of people, they're the ones that put a lot of money into the economy. Right? They're the ones that buy the cars, go on the expensive vacations. They put money back in. I remember one time someone said, oh, he's buying a boat, he's not benefiting anybody. Well, think about it. If a luxury boat is purchased, who makes that luxury boat? It's not billionaires making the boat.
Sure.
There are everyday people on an assembly line or however they make a luxury boat.
Yeah.
So people are benefiting in a way. So when I hear, tax the rich, that's going to do it. You probably heard that even if you tax the rich, that wouldn't even put a dent in, let's say, the national debt.
The $21 trillion debt?
Right.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I talked a little bit about, not so much the national debt, but the deficit, let's say, in Suffolk County.
Sure.
And how do you do that? There's only two ways: raise revenue or cut spending.
Yeah.
Now, on a county level, we can't print money like the federal government
No,
can.
we cannot.
And I'm not suggesting they do that, but they can. But how do you cut expenses? Right? No politician wants to go out there and say, I'm going to close down that beach. I'm going to close down that park.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to whatever. I'm going to shut down that road. But do you handle fiscal issues with the Suffolk County Legislature?
So we're always looking to improve Suffolk County fiscally because without fiscally sound policy, you're not going to have a county to live in further. And also, it's one of the richest counties in the country, but also it is, becoming one of the most unaffordable places to live. And that's unfortunate because, I want to live here. I want to raise my kids here because I went to a great school district with Danny. And I think that if everyone could have the opportunity to live here, that would be fantastic. However, with it being unaffordable, I actually just had a quote in Newsday today's paper where I talked about the rising Long Island Railroad fares. And they're about to be raised 4%, which is in the proposal, which would make fares 102% more than they were 20 years ago. Now, I'm sure the rate of inflation, or cost of living has not increased 100%, nor has anything really cost-wise increased 100%. Yeah, but Fares have, and I'm sure you can attest to this, the Long Island Railroad is not 100% better than it was 20 years ago.
I'm fortunate. I hardly ever take it. The only time I take
you
it,
know what?
if I have to go to the city or something like that.
I'm happy for you. I'm sorry, but there, we have trains being repaired by duct tape, and overworked conductors, and fares skyrocketing, and stations that are dilapidated and not compliant with ADA requirements. So I want to identify the fiscal issues of the county, and I want to see where we can increase revenue, whether it be through means of cutting taxes and things like where fees, we have a lot of disastrous fees for going to county parks and things like that.
And they don't call those taxes; they call them fees. So
of course,
kind of
so
skate
it's
the
legal.
issue. Yeah, skate the issue a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's hurtful, because Suffolk County's greatest asset are beaches and our parks, because we have rare trees, we have fish that you can't find in anywhere else in the world, and of course we have the world's best beaches. So why would we want to prevent people?
Hawaii might want to disagree with that.
I know. I'm sure I'll get a call after this one from some friends in Hawaii who have some words to say to me. However, I think that we have a sales tax in New York, which is it's actually 4.5%, but then each county pitches in half of it, and that's where the county generates a bulk of its revenue is from sales tax. Now, we may not be able to generate revenue through applying fees and red light cameras, which thankfully are being ruled unconstitutional, but we are able to raise revenue through doing what we do best, and that's being attractive to outside residents and who is living here right now. So if we are able to somehow manage to cut costs to the point where we can also even marginally reduce the sales tax, we would see an increased tourism industry, as well as increased of people crossing county lines in order to just avoid the high sales tax in Nassau. Just to they'll come from Plainview to get, or I'm sorry, from places like Westbury to just go to Huntington, for groceries and things like that, because there's such a burdensome tax in New York. It feels like they could tax, if they could tax air, they probably would.
Right.
Yeah.
And the property tax is very high.
No.
Because even if someone handed somebody a house in a nice neighborhood, the taxes could be $10,000, $12,000, $15,000.
Absolutely.
So if you're on a fixed income, let's say you retire, and your property tax is $12,000, that's $1,000 a month.
Of course, and
not to mention all the other expenses you have.
And our job, sitting on the Next Generation Advisory Committee, is to ensure that Suffolk is better for youth everywhere. And if we keep pricing people out of this county, we're never going to be able to live in it.
Now, Suffolk County Legislature, it's mostly Democrats, right?
Yeah.
It's like two.
I think it's 10-8.
10
right
oh,
yeah.
Is that close now?
Or I'm sorry, it's 11-7 actually.
Okay, right.
It's 11-7.
That's what I thought. So sometimes it's hard to get things passed. If let's say you're a Republican,
sure,
and you want to get something passed, you have to almost form a coalition, right? Because it's hard to. You don't have the numbers.
Yeah.
It's same right now in the House of Representatives. The Republicans just don't have the numbers to pass certain things. But having worked for that body, is there bipartisanship on some of the issues that you were talking about?
I actually, I encourage people. I interned with the Suffolk Legislature years ago now, and I always encourage kids coming out of college or high school and who are in college to intern with the Suffolk Legislature, because that is the best form of bipartisanship working. I've seen legislators go toe-to-toe on issues. We had great debates between Lou DeMauro, who is no longer a legislator, who's termed out, but Lou DeMauro and people on the other side of the aisle, and I've seen legislator Spencer, who is a legislator for the Huntington district, work really well with Rob Trotta on issues and do things that I've never seen legislatures around the country do. And these people understand that there isn't a Republican or Democratic way to fix a pothole. You just fix that pothole, you fill it with cement.
Get it
done. And that's the prevailing thinking there, and they're really able to get down and work with each other, even though there may be a slight, or even large difference in makeup.
But just like at the federal level, you got to keep sight of the goal.
Of course.
And the goal in Suffolk County is you don't want people fleeing Suffolk County.
Of course not.
To Florida or North Carolina. You see it all the time. in my practice, I see it where people can't afford to live here.
Mm-hmm.
I see it in terms of a relocation case where they're fighting over custody or somebody wants to move with a child because they can't afford to live here.
Of course.
You know, if you make a lot of money, it's a wonderful place.
Of course, yeah.
If you're struggling and you're making minimum wage, how do you live?
You don't.
In Suffolk County.
You don't. You either go home with your parents or you move to North Carolina, like you said.
Now, another problem that we face in Suffolk County on a regular basis is the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
Now, when I was reading a little bit about your background, that's something that you addressed.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, you know, when I was studying, I was able to pass the first of many bills in order to improve mental health services at my university, but also to create recovery housing, which is housing that ensures people are on the road to recovery and you know, making sure that they're making healthy choices and ensuring that they are getting clean. Now, for terms of Suffolk, actually, I'm working with Legislator Spencer to create a youth opiate advisory task force, which you know, will work to get stakeholder input and make sure that we're creating policies that target 18 to 30-year-olds, because the opioid epidemic is affecting all groups and you know, is disastrous on so many levels, and is actually killing more people than car accidents now. No. We want to make sure that you know, where addiction is most prevalent in 18 to 25-year-olds and 18 to 30-year-olds, that we're targeting our policies and making sure that they're broadcasted in the correct manner, and that we are doing our best in order to curb this epidemic.
Mm-hmm. Because you're constantly reading the newspaper. I have clients, their children are killing themselves out there.
Of course.
You know, overdosing or just destroying their lives,
Yeah.
and it's sad to see. But what seems to be the root problems? Why is Suffolk County hit? And there are other places in the country that are hit hard.
Sure.
But why is Suffolk County, Nassau County, Long Island, why is Long Island hit hard by this epidemic? What have you been seeing? Yeah,
so, you know, New England, and of course we border New England, is a particularly hard hit place by the...
I think New Hampshire also has pretty high numbers.
Yeah, lots of people are dying of overdose deaths. And, you know, I think that the stigma is trailing over from New England, but also that we, you know, are in a time where we're requiring instant gratification. We need to answer texts immediately and things like that. And life is becoming even more stressful for people. So they're looking for the next way to get out. And unfortunately, some people turn to opiates. And that's unfortunate because, you know, we are cracking down on illegal prescribing practices and things like that. But at the end of the day, only 8% of people who are being prescribed opiates are actually turning into, you know, illegal use or you know, abusing the medication that they're being.
Only 8%.
Yeah, only 8% of properly prescribed people end up becoming addicted to opiates. Mm-hmm. So, you know, knowing that, there's, you know, now 92% who aren't, and what we're working on is we're trying to focus in on what that 92% is composed of, which is mostly young people, and we're trying to figure out where along the line are they coming into contact with opiates, and where you know, they are feeling that they need to resort to this kind of you know, use, which it's a disastrous disease, and I'm really trying to do my best, and everybody's trying to do their part to curb, you know, the use and also the epidemic itself. But I also know that we have a problem with what's called the air bridge, which is, you know, we're getting opiates via ports of entry in this country, and we don't have the proper security infrastructure to be able to, you know, detect and enforce the laws to, you know, curb the opioid influx that we're getting, mm-hmm. and heroin.
Now you're talking about through the southern border.
Actually, so we, you know, when we were in Philadelphia, we had so many busts at, you know, ports of entry in just our shipping containers and things like that. People are and cartels are actually able to ship really high potency heroin and, you know, what's called synthetic fentanyl,
yeah,
through these shipping containers, as well as you know, toll booths and things like that. So you know, the majority of the illegally used and synthetic drugs actually come through these ports and seaports.
Oh, by sea. Okay. Now, do they have like dogs that can maybe sniff this out?
Sure, yeah, and the problem with using dogs is that we have so much coming through these ports. Like Newark is the nation's second largest, Los Angeles being the first, and Philadelphia, I believe, being the fifth largest. There's just no way that we have the resources right now to be able to detect and scan all these containers. Now, I think that we also need to think about increasing customs agents at ports of entry like those seaports, but also places even like Long Island MacArthur Airport and airports around the country need to be able to enforce security measures and better security measures and more high-tech security measures in order to really nip in the bud this opiate epidemic and heroin epidemic.
Now, some of the fentanyl and the opioids that are coming into the ports you were talking about,
Yeah.
whether it be LA, New York, Philadelphia, whatever, is it coming through international ships?
So a lot of the time it's coming from Middle Eastern designated ships, as well as from South America, and cartels from either from poppy fields in the Middle East, but also from down south are intercepting cargo containers, which aren't scanned at their original ports in Bolivia, things like that, and they're not being scanned, so they get up to up into New York and escape detection until they get to in the hands of gangs around.
Okay, that's interesting, because I didn't realize it was that prevalent in those kinds of ports.
Unfortunately, we catch almost $2 million every day of drugs getting in through those ports.
Is the interdiction working somewhat? Are we lessening the amount of opioids and fentanyl coming into our country?
So we are. It's hard to quantify that measurement because we can only measure how much we're catching. But
we don't know sometimes what we're not catching.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know necessarily what we don't catch because it either gets used or it causes an overdose or it causes mayhem within a locality.
It's not like it's coming in and going to a pharmacy.
Yeah, and we can tabulate it.
It's hitting the streets.
Yeah.
And if we make a bust, we find out there's a lot that's slipping through the cracks.
Unfortunately, and that's why I'm a big proponent of increasing border security and border security at our ports of entry because we have a real problem, and especially smaller airports like MacArthur and Harrisburg International are unfortunately targets for a lot of these drug movers because they don't have the security measures that of JFK or a Philadelphia International might have.
Now, in addition to that, obviously drugs are coming in through our southern border, and there's been a lot in the news about what should we do about it. Trump says a wall or a fence or whatever, and then a lot of the Dems are saying it's really not going to make a difference. Now, I know you deal more in local politics, let's say, but what is your opinion of Trump's proposal, let's say, to build a wall or to make it very difficult for people to come across?
I think that our country is made better by immigrants. We are founded on immigrants, and we are a nation of immigrants. I'm Italian and Filipino, so I am a direct descendant of immigrants and making a better life in this country. I think that any border infrastructure that we can improve, whether it be improving the lives of the agents that we do send there or anything like that, where we ensure that we're cooperating with other countries, one, to make sure that people don't have to flee their countries to seek better lives here, because there's
but a lot of that's not all up to us.
Exactly. But I also understand that we are in a very, very unique position as the world's most powerful country to be able to say, hey, you know what? If Bolivia or Nicaragua or any of these Central American countries need assistance with curbing gang violence, which is why we have caravans and why we have multitudes of people crossing the border, is because people are seeking better lives, but also seeking...
I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't blame them. I'm living a great life here. I think if
I could somehow come to America from one of those countries, I would do it too.
Absolutely, and I think that, you know, if we improve the lives south of the border, and we make sure that there are security measures in place there that they can handle it themselves, and make sure that people aren't being killed just for bearing witness to a drug cartel's operations, I think we will improve the problem of having undocumented immigrants within the country, and also for the people that are here, I think we need to be able to vet them. We need to be able to ensure that they are not a threat to the country.
Absolutely.
And I think anyone can agree that we don't want bad people in this country. So, I think that we need to go a step forward and start actually processing these people into our citizenship processes, and make sure that they are receiving vetting from the federal government but also make it a path towards becoming American citizens, so that they're tax-paying citizens, and they really create a dedication to this country.
But the problem, I think we can agree that immigration has made this country great. I agree.
Sure.
But we still need legal immigration.
Of course.
Now, I'm not for rounding up everyone here that's illegal, send them back. That's impractical, that's cruel.
It's expensive.
Right. Obviously, if someone gets caught, they commit a crime, send them back.
Sure.
But if we don't make it difficult for people to come into this country, we're going to have more caravans coming and coming and coming. Because I know in the family court system, if you're from Central America, not Mexico, but Central America, if you say, if I go back, if you're a woman, I could be raped, I could be killed. If you're a guy and you say, I'm going to go back and they're going to put me in a gang, they're allowed to stay here. A lot of them, not a lot, some of them are MS-13. They slip through the cracks. We know that. That's how some of them come here. But if we don't fix the wall, we're going to have this problem over and over and over. You'll be my age still having this conversation if we don't stop the flow of illegal immigration. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, sure. And what, Suffolk County just released its crime statistics for 2018, and we actually saw a 12% decrease in violent crime, and we saw a huge decline in MS-13 related crime. We had, unfortunately,
because we're tackling it. You saw some of the things the president has done and local officials have done.
Well, yeah,
putting it front and center.
So the thing is, with reference to MS-13, it's not necessarily fully composed of immigrant people. There are people who have resided within this country who were born here, but
sure. But they recruit a lot of people that come in.
And the thing is if we start targeting immigrants, we're not going to be able to successfully enforce the law. If we start I understand that you're not for rounding up people and shipping them back, but there are some people who are cooperating with law enforcement, who are undocumented, who are solely responsible for that huge decrease in gang-related violence in Suffolk County. Now, I understand that we're all here to make it a safer country, and we're all here to make it a safer county. But I think that we need to understand that if we, I'm going back to my last point, where if we ensure that there isn't an outstanding amount of gang violence, an outstanding amount of, just general cartel violence in some of these Central American countries, that we can see decreases in illegal immigration and people trying to force their entry into the United States, because, asylum seekers account for a vast majority of people trying to enter this country, unfortunately. And I think that for the people who are here, if we can tabulate them and ensure that, if we put them on a path to citizenship, we are able to better, understand and keep track of who they are, where they are, and what they're doing.
But sometimes they come here, let's say an asylum seeker, and we give them a court date.
Sure.
Many of them don't come back. They just disappear into the fabric of, and I know that for a fact. I've spoken to immigration attorneys, and that's what happens. There's not enough judges. God forbid they put him in a cell, and then that picture gets posted, and they say, what are you doing? So a lot of these people, they get a number or they get a court date, and they don't come back. So some of them we can't keep track of. And some of them overstay their visas, we know that.
Sure.
So it's not all just hopping a wall. Some of them come in here legally.
Some are student visas. Yeah.
Student visas, and they stay past their visa date.
Yeah.
And that's another way, which is sometimes a little harder to find out where they go.
Yeah, and I think it's a result of a very complicated citizenship system. So we have people who are here for student and work visas, and which actually account for the majority of illegal immigration, and who overstay their visas. And the unfortunate thing is that they came here originally to study, make our localities a better place through their contributions to society. Sure. And I think that we need to make the visa system a more efficient system, one where we can ensure that we're keeping track of these people, one, while they're here, but also making sure that they remain contributing citizens to this country. We just actually had a rapper, 21 Savage, who was arrested because the U.S. immigration officials found out that he wasn't originally from Atlanta, much to the dismay of his rapper's cred. He was actually from the United Kingdom. Now, I have never listened to a 21 Savage song. However,
I never heard him before.
Exactly. But I think his life is valuable as a human life, but also I think that he is of value to this country because he can, hope if he makes it big, he contributes to the economy, like you said. Rich people will contribute to the economy. He'll contribute to the economy through that. He'll also, I'm sure, do some kind of charitable work with a school in Atlanta and ensure that kids have better opportunities. So I think that there are a lot of people who are overstaying their visas and contribute to illegal immigration, but I don't think they're necessarily the problem with the country, and I think that we should make it easier to become citizens of this country.
Right, and there are a lot of people, you hear from them, that say, I stood online,
Sure.
metaphorically.
Of course.
I stood online, I paid my fees, I did what I had to do, they checked me out, and it's not fair. It would be like, and I know it's not, I'm not equating it with the same thing, it's like going to an amusement park, standing online, and having people just cut in front of you. And some of these people say, I'm waiting to become a citizen. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. All they did was either overstay the visa, hop a fence. They come into this country, especially if you make it to California, they're very generous with their basket of benefits. That's why a lot of them would rather go to California than some other places.
Sure. So, I think that people who overstay their visas and also enter the country legally through one means or another still would have to go through the same citizenship test and the vetting process that anyone who came here via their visa and then applied for citizenship. I think that we still need to put them through the same process and ensure that we're ensuring our domestic tranquility and security. But I also think that justice is supposed to be blind. But I also think that who we deem a citizen should also be blind, and we need to be able to process these people regardless of how they got here, because I think that most people, if not all, can be contributing members to this country.
Now, and you said the key word is process.
Sure.
There are people here that come here that don't avail themselves to the process.
Yeah.
They just, let's say they come in a truck, you see sometimes, and some of them die. That's the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of people, they put them in like a drug mule or somebody that gets a certain amount of money. They come in, they scatter, and some of them work, some of them don't. But how do you process somebody that doesn't want to avail themselves to the process?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
So when we do finally track these people down via
what do you do with them?
I think deportation should be the last means of dealing with them, only because it's an expensive method, and it's also a legally egregious one. So I think we need to understand that if this person, we need to figure out what kind of threat they are, if any, and figure out if they have any connection to some kind of foreign power or outside group that may be contrary to our security. That after that, if we find that they are nothing more than someone who is seeking a better life in a country like ours, then we should afford them that process, because we're only better off with people who are dedicated to make a better life for themselves.
Right. I remember you heard of Charles Krauthammer, obviously.
Oh yeah,
he died.
Rest in peace.
Died about a year ago. Very bright guy.
Of course.
I respected the man highly. And one of the things he said that made a lot of sense. He was on a panel one time. He always seemed to have a common sense approach and he wasn't a fire thrower. You know what I mean?
No, he's a deliberative guy. Yeah.
And he said, like I said a little while ago, if you don't seal the border or make it so that people can't come here illegally, and I know you can't do it 100%. He
Sure.
says, you're going to have this conversation continuously down the road. He said, it's just like if a pipe burst in the city, right? You don't send guys to fix the pipe until you
Sure.
stop the flow of the water.
Yeah.
So he said, before we decide what to do with these people, and he wasn't an advocate for rounding them up and deporting them, but he said, we have to seal the border so that we can manage the people that are here.
Sure.
And if you do that, then you have ports of entry. You have a process. You have an application process.
Sure.
People can come here legally. We can vet them.
Yeah.
If people could just flow in whenever they want, what's the point?
So, I actually have a question for you on that.
Okay.
So if we're sealing the border on the south, are we going to do it with the north?
If we don't have a problem on the north, then we don't.
But we do. That's the thing. We still have people bringing in illegal prescription medicines from Canada, and there are plenty of people who are leaving Canada in order to avoid some of the many arduous processes of citizenship in Canada, because in Canada citizenship is 100 times more arduous than it is here. That you already need to have a job for 10 years. You need to do all these really egregious methods of entering Canada. So people end up leaving Canada to come here in order to avoid the arduous process of citizenship in Canada. So, if we're going to have a conversation about the southern border, we also need to have one about the northern, because then, we can at least say
look, we have limited
academically honest.
resources.
Sure.
President Trump can't get even enough money for the southern border.
Sure.
So before we talk about the northern border, but if there's a problem with the southern border, then maybe we need to look into that. But first, the southern border, I think, is the more immediate problem.
Yeah.
And I would leave it up to the expert, like ICE. All right? I know AOC wants to get rid of ICE, and a lot of them, which is, I kind of find it
we had INS before that.
strange,
but, yeah.
right. And a lot of it, the people get confused, the ICE and the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol is on the border. ICE is more interior, and they track down people. It could be a sex ring or sex traffickers or drug. You need an agency like that.
Yeah.
You can't just put it on the local police department.
Yeah.
That, let's say, doesn't track people from the border to where they are.
Yeah.
So I think we need a good executive, just like you're on a council.
Sure.
The people on the legislature, they don't have all the answers.
Of course not.
So they look to you for certain
They're
types of
humans,
issues. Right.
yeah.
So a president or any good executive, like I have a law firm.
Of course.
I look to my paralegals. I say, look, do a little research, get me some information about that area of the law.
Okay.
Or a current case or something. So we should look to ICE and the Border Patrol people to say, where are the problems?
Yeah.
And if the southern border is the big problem, if overnight, all of a sudden, Canada became the problem, you know what? Then we switch our focus.
Yeah.
But he can't even get $2 million for a fence on the southern border.
Well, yeah. So, I think it's because I think Democrats are really digging their heels in on the border wall because,
they don't want to give him a win. I think that's part of it.
Well, also, as I explained, the majority of illegal drugs that flow into this country don't come through the southern border. They come through ports.
Some of them do.
But it wouldn't be enough to be able to spend $25-30 billion on, because it just, if we're going to tackle an issue, why haven't we declared an emergency for the port of entry or anything like that? Why haven't we started dedicating more law enforcement to our shipping ports and our containers?
Give Trump some time. He's
well, no, sure, but and don't get me wrong. I think every president has something that they consider their legislative win or their infrastructural win.
He's only been there 2 years.
Yeah, and we're only a little over halfway past the first term, and I think that we need to instead of having this debate and risking the paychecks of 800,000 to a couple million federal workers, we need to have this debate in the like Obamacare. Maybe it's not everybody's favorite legislation, but that debate was had on the Senate floor, and we meshed it out, and we didn't shut down the government in order to create the Affordable Care Act. We had that debate with the government open, and we ensured that people were getting their paychecks. So if we're going to have the border wall debate, I think we shouldn't necessarily have it while the government shut down. We should have it on the floor.
And I don't think that will happen again. But I think
hopefully
Trump may declare an emergency. He may do that because I don't think he wants to hurt the country with another shutdown. I don't think he's going to do that.
Yeah, but also
And it's like a week away. What is it, a week or two away?
Yeah,
the next one.
It's I believe this Friday. So we're right on the heels of it, and hopefully we don't, because I actually just spent some time down at Island Harvest, and I was helping out a food drive, not a food drive, distributing goods to federal workers, and a lot of these people, it was their first time ever having to come to a pantry, and it was devastatingly heartbreaking to see, because these people were very proud of themselves, and they were proud of the work that they did.
And they were caught in the middle.
Yeah, and they were caught in the middle, and I think that's something that both sides need to see, is that we should have this debate, but we should have it while the government's open and not.
No, I agree. But one of the I find fault with the Democrats. Trump was trying to compromise. I believe that. Even when he said a while back, I'll give you $1 million DACAs, remember? Or 800, whatever that number was, the DACA kids.
Oh, yeah.
And the Democrats didn't even budge, because they want that issue. Maybe I'm being a little cynical, but they want that issue. If Trump wins the issue, what was the first thing he said when he came down that escalator?
I don't remember.
Build a wall.
Okay.
We're going to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Now, look, I never really took that too seriously, that Mexico, but there are things we can do to defray the cost.
Yeah, so I think there's ways we can defray any cost, but I think the idea that we're prioritizing southern border security versus port security and anything like that it begs the question of why now, why here, and why are we prioritizing that border security?
Yeah, but a lot of the Democrats voted for that years ago, to build the wall, or fencing. They called it fencing.
Yeah,
and now
so
they're saying no.
Bush.
So are they being hypocritical? Do they see something different now than they saw before?
I can't get in the mind of the senators voting on this, but I for myself, I think that instead of thinking of how we can shore up a physical border, we should think about how illegal immigration is occurring in the United States, and how we can ensure that we are ensuring our security, but also creating a way for good, outstanding citizens to be part of this country.
Right. And we have laws for that. And sometimes we don't follow those laws. It's funny, my barber is Russian, and we were talking about immigration, and he says other countries laugh at America because we are so lenient when it comes to illegal immigration. Now, I'm not saying I want to follow the Russian model, but he had a point. When you have a country, it's a sovereign nation. And if people just come in, it's like the old Trojan horse, remember? Yeah. People can come in, and now what if we see caravan after caravan after caravan? What do we do at some point? We can't let everybody in. We have to take a stand.
I mean, we also have to really think of what. So, I'm sure a big concern of yours is terrorism. And, I actually studied some counterterrorism when I was at school. And what we came to realize was that the terrorism and the security issues that we do have don't occur because of immigration. They don't occur because of people entering the country legally. They occur because people are radicalized, like Dylan Roof, like Adam Lanza, and they go into schools and churches.
No, domestic terrorism.
Yeah, domestic terrorism is currently is currently actually the #1 killer on with terrorism related crimes. We had the mail bomber just recently, and we have people who are seeking to hurt us who are already within this country.
That kind of disappeared? You haven't heard about that?
Yeah, that's surprising.
It's amazing. You hear other things, but
Well, he's being tried, but yeah.
We got to wrap things up. I'm going to give you a minute. Tell us a little bit about your future goals, what you'd like to see for this county, some of the things you're working toward.
Yeah. So, I want to see a county that is free of opiates, and a county that is able to afford a better life for generations to come, and ensure that we have a county that serves everybody rather than just some.
I appreciate that. Listen, I really want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Phil.
I'm going to have you on again, because some of these things I wanted to discuss more, but we're limited in the amount of time we have. I have to look at that little red clock, and when that ticks down, I gotta stop talking. But I really want to thank you for coming on. I wish you the best of luck, and I think you'd make a great show host.
Thank you.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Thank you very much for watching. You take care.